introduce her?
Tonight we are very fortunate to have an amazing stained glass artist. She's the designer and manager of Williams Stained Glass Studio. Her name is Keely Hancox, and she started her career in 2006. She has some phenomenal rock star samples that she'll be showing you in a little bit, but she does a lot of portrait work. She also does charcoal portraits, and she's a fixture at the North Hills Art Center and the Pottery Studio, of all places. She graduated from Ohio State University and has a degree in art education, and I think this is really cool. She was on the track team, and she was a javelin thrower. That's kind of a neat way to differentiate you. She's also spent several months in Florence, Italy, studying art. So welcome, Keely.
Thanks, everyone. I'm new to this and new here, so thanks for having me. And like she said, I went to Ohio State art ed major, focused in drawing, painting, pottery in college. And I actually worked at a frame shop, so that's where I learned how to cut glass for like my part-time job when I was in college. Then after college, I actually spent 2 years in Barcelona, where I did English as a second language teacher and sold a few paintings. That was really, really cool. And then when I moved back to Pennsylvania, I substitute taught for a while, trying to get my foot in the door to be a high school or elementary art teacher. And it's hard to get those jobs. So I ended up changing my career path, moved to Pittsburgh, and ended up at Williams Stained Glass, where I've been ever since. So that's like a little quick background of me. But the company I work for in Castle Shannon, which is near Mount Lebanon, they started in 1984, and they've been doing the traditional hand-cut everything. So the original owners retired in 2016, and their son took over their family business. And that's where I stepped in and took over like the head design job. So I was apprenticed for a very long time before I'm kind of like running the design and all that stuff. So I figured I'd start off with what to me is the most important part of stained glass, and that is the actual drawing and the design work. Because you can't do anything without that. So you do it on the computer. So I brought my old laptop and thought I could maybe show you just how we get started with that whole process, which turns into eventually watercolors that I do, which turns into an eventual huge stained glass window. So that's why I brought my laptop. And then I brought some other like smaller patterns too, but our company does like large windows. We do a lot of churches, restorations, restaurants, and whatnot. So I don't know if you guys can see, this was a particular design from this past spring. I don't know if you guys just want to pass this around, but that's what that window eventually looked like. It ended up being a bunch of koi fish that was 70 inches wide by 13 tall, so very long but very short, like a transom. So it's hard, I don't know if you guys want to step up and look, but so what I do is I come up with, I usually start off with like 3 designs for different people. And she wasn't sure if she wanted koi fish or not. So I gave her some other like abstract ideas and less expensive. This one more traditional, way less expensive, but she chose the koi fish design. So
Now, when you talk about expensive, is it just that, like
Yep.
straight shapes, or it's how much time?
yeah, so that is the most intricate of all the designs I presented to her.
Did you have to draw those fish?
I did, well, like you usually do a hand drawing and then I trace it into the computer program.
Okay.
But this is all, our program draws, it's drawn to scale. So we have a huge plotter printer at our studio that we print out the size of the windows. But just let me see, here's like our work order for this. So that was like my watercolor that I gave to her first.
Wow, it's so pretty.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
And then at that stage is when I show them glass samples that would kind of match up as close as possible to that watercolor. And then it turns into the final window. So
Wow.
that's the design process, which it's my favorite part. So And like before, she was only gonna do 2 koi fish, but then she changed it to 3 to like represent her children. She had 3 kids to be more symbolic. So.
Keely, could you hold that up to the camera this way? There you go.
This was the one that was not chosen. So there's a lot of design work and time that go into something this pricey, that it's worth the design work, and then once they choose everything. And then if you see that second page, Nan, that you're looking at how we label everything, it's pretty detailed. Well, once the watercolor is done and the glass is chosen, it's literally kind of like paint by number for the glass selections and stuff. And that's where I don't do, this is all lead cane stuff, they're very big. I do smaller things. But so our craftsmen that have been there for over 20 years, they know how to cut pieces of glass that puts like a flicker of light at the top to give it a little more depth and stuff like that. So as long as it looks close to my watercolors, we're all happy. And like this is another cool project, my favorite project of the year. It was a skylight for somebody's kitchen. So let me pull up hers. Not that one.
A little spooky.
So she changed her mind a lot. So I went through a bunch of like geometrical designs for her. And then she ended up wanting to choose this really cool contemporary design. So that's what she chose.
How did she guide you? What was her input to say, like, this is kind of what I want?
Sometimes people don't know what they want. And that's where I come in, and that's like the fun part for me. And we narrow it down, but so this is an example of like the watercolor versus like the finished product and how it looked after installation.
Oh, wow.
So that was a really cool. So there was actually 4 separate panels for a skylight for that project.
Oh, wow.
But she originally, she was thinking way more complex than she needed to be, and a bunch of different designs, and we narrowed it down on that. And the fun part about being a painter is finding pieces of glass that almost look painted, like they're just so colorful. Like, use this piece for that part, and that's my favorite part. Yeah.
So how long is that process then?
It depends on, there's some clients immediately like, I love that one, let's go. It
And
could
then
be
how long does it take to make the window?
a couple of days. It depends on our workload right now, because we've been backed up because of COVID lockdowns, and we do a lot of church restorations and stuff like that. So we're probably about 6 to 8 weeks out.
Okay.
But normally we're closer to 4 to 6, so we're not too far behind, but we're behind. But,
Now, do you install wood in the house too?
Yep.
Oh,
Our
wow.
company does. We're a small company, but we, from start to finish, they'll go and they'll measure first, like before. So I'll draw it. The customer will say, this is approximately 48 by 48. Design process, watercolors, glass selection gets finished. Then our craftsmen go to the house and make sure it's down to like the 16th of an inch.
Yeah.
So it's very meticulous on that installation.
Wow.
And then they'll fabricate it and then go back and install. And so I did bring a sample of lead cane is what our company mainly does, but I work more I work in copper foil, which is what I'll do later. But just so you guys can maybe see a difference so this was an old window that we restored and replaced with all brand new lead cane.
Sorry about that.
So they use strips of lead cane and just solder the joints, and then they cement afterwards. So that's just a sample of like a restored window. Yeah. And so lead cane can come in so many different strips, but when you get real intricate, it's bendable. So they they bend it around all those curved shapes or they
My
touchscreen.
Would
So
you like to come on?
there's a lot that goes into stained glass.
Wait, wait.
Yeah, but you could see how it's so flexible.
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of restorations and repairs that we do, what happens is, say there's a window that's 100 years old, but you see all over Pittsburgh. That's why that's like 75% of our business is restoring windows. Once the cement, the final part of restoring a window, they put cement inside this channel to keep the windows strong. That breaks down. So after 75 to 100 years,
Yeah.
the whole lead starts bending and stretching. And that's when you see, have you ever seen windows that bow and sag and look like old windows?
Yeah.
That's what happens. So normally what we need to do is take them apart like a puzzle and then put it back together with brand new lead. So that's what we call a re-lead, which, like I said, is probably one of our #1 repairs living here in Pittsburgh. So I brought like a sample of like our most recent one that we did.
Here.
Our craftsman removed an old window that was like an accordion and bowing. And he used charcoal and he made a rubbing of a bunch of beveled glass. So he knew like all the X's were broken. So he replaced all of those and completely re-leaded it with new lead cane. So it's like getting a brand new window reusing antique glass.
Where was that for?
This was, oh my goodness.
A church?
Well, that was a beveled, it was all beveled glass. I think that this, I forget what the client's name was. Is it written on there? We work all over the city. This could have been one in Sharpsburg, I believe, but we, like I said.
What was it, a church?
No, this would be, this was just somebody's, a door panel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was gorgeous, but
Wow.
it was literally falling apart with a bunch of broken pieces. So just to give you an idea of how much a restoration of this would probably end up costing, was, I'd say close to $2,000. It could have been more than that, but so that's just like a little bit of like what our company does. And then we recently, here's another cartoon printout of a brand new window that we did, just to show you like the small, like kind of like medium-sized one. The stuff I'm going to show you is more like sun catchers and smaller things.
So that's to scale then?
Yeah. So whatever I draw on the computer will print out to scale like this, and then.
And then how do you use that to actually make the glass? Do you just?
We print 2 copies. So one will be like the layout, like what I'll show you for like a smaller version. And then we have to cut apart the other one, and each little piece is cut out, and that's how you trace and cut the glass. So like for example, this was my cartoon when I made my Tom Petty, oh where is he? There he is. So that was the drawing I did to make this. But I also did a second copy, and each one of these little tiny shapes is individually cut out, and that's how I cut the glass. So you could just see, and I just like the directional lines of the glass, like I try to make it look like a painting if I can, in stained glass, so it's beautiful. Yeah.
Can we hold that up in front of the light? Just say it.
Yeah.
So, and I also wanted his glasses to look like he was staring into a sunset.
Yeah,
That's
very
so
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
Wow. That's cool.
Thank you.
And this is stuff I do just on the side for myself, not for my actual company.
Okay.
That'd be a good cool album cover.
And, well, I did a
Great
Jim,
side,
Yeah.
my favorite one is Jimmy.
Oh, wow.
So I tried to use like some different,
Background is great.
yeah, that's pretty cool glass. And it's important to make everything go kind of directional and.
So now the glass comes in sheets?
Well, what happened in particular with this one, these pieces was from a sample set from a company that went out of business. So they no longer exist. So I had a whole box of these little tiny index card pieces of glass, and like, well, might as well use them somehow, not throw them out.
And you know how to cut glass.
And then this is like my first one I did with all these things is like a Beatles one. It was kind of,
That's cool.
and it's kind of a little psychedelic.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So those are some things I do like personally on the, like just on the side, but So our number one thing we sell at work for small things are these little snowflakes. We probably sell around 50 of them around Christmas time. So if you notice, I have it all ready to go, but I'm going to cut 2 more pieces and show you how I cut glass, grind it, and then put the copper foil on and maybe talk a little bit more about how that works. So.
Okay.
Okay, so first part is once you have like the stencil drawn, I cut little pieces. So these are the pieces I need to cut to match these shapes right here. So to save a little bit of time, because stained glass can be tedious to watch. That's why I'm a little bit worried about doing a presentation. I'm like, ooh, how interesting could this be? So I already drew in marker the pattern that I needed to just cut out.
Okay.
You have to understand, Keely, for most of our demos, we're watching paint dry, so.
So the first thing though, just to cut like these little shapes with glass,
Yeah.
you never want to cut glass right on the very, very edge. You always want to start like a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch in. You don't want to go like right there and through. And the way I do pressure for how you cut glass, has anybody cut glass in here before?
I do.
What do you use to cut?
Oh, sorry, yep. So this is a glass cutter that we use at work. So it's like a diamond head. There's a little blade on it. That's a diamond head that cuts the glass. But our grip, this liquid inside, is just like a fluid that kind of smooths it out so you don't have such a messy cut. There's different types of glass cutters. Most of them don't have the fluid inside, but this is what we stand by where I work, so that's what I always use. And the pressure, yeah, so that, well, there's different ways to, I've been doing it long enough that I'm just, it'd probably make it look easier than it actually is, but I would always think of the pressure that you have. Some people think they have to really cut hard on the glass. And another thing too, is once you make one cut line, you never go back and forth, just one and done.
So you're like just scoring it, really?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it. So you just do a quick score. And I always think of the pressure as being like if you would use an X-Acto knife and cut like cardboard. So you don't really have to press too hard, but hard enough.
Yeah.
And then once you start getting used to it, then you'll get the feel of like actually cutting glass. And this is important too, what I'm cutting on. If you notice, because some people will cut right on a table, and little glass shards will just lay on the table, and next thing you know, your hand's all bleeding.
Oh.
So all these little recessed squares will catch those shards and keep you from
Oh, it's like a honeycomb.
unnecessary cuts. So
Okay.
these are little things I forget about explaining to people because I'm just so used to using them. But so like if I just want to cut this one little line, just, and there's different tools to use, like a grazer is what I always use, and that will just snip off. And I'll finish that diamond shape.
Oh.
It's a very satisfying sound.
What's that?
It's a very satisfying sound. It's like
Yeah.
Rudy.
And yes, she would make it look easy.
Yeah. Mine would be so jagged.
And then sometimes I get used to it, I just use my hands to snip it. Most people use like the tools. And it's like anything else though, like the more you do it,
Yeah.
the better you get at it. So then I have this other diamond.
That's
is so weird.
Does glass by its nature want to break off straight?
Tornado.
Well, I'm gonna do some curved pieces here in a bit to show you the difference.
What is our name?
It's the store.
It's a store.
Oh, just.
Do we post
No.
You were? I swear I checked the longer time,
It's a 50-50 chance. Of everything.
So if you
That's
get,
what I-
if you get an edge that doesn't cut straight, can you just move in a little bit?
Well, that's where the grinding will come into play, because that's the savior when you mess up your glass pads. And, and how I make a snowflake, I should have said first, this is just with a beveled trap, like a diamond that you could order online. But you still need to grind the edges of these and foil them, which I'm gonna show you exactly what I just did. So these pieces of glass I just cut to finish off that snowflake, they're real sharp edges. And you can still see, that's not perfect, like what you were just asking.
Yeah.
There's still that line there. That's when you use the glass grinder, and you just try to grind it down to become that shape. And then I'll talk about foiling after that. There's a lot to go into doing stuff like this. Okay. So this is also like a diamond blade. So all it's going to do is make the edges porous, which the foil will stick to better. Like you would never want to do a stained glass copper foil piece without a porous glass edge because it needs something to adhere to. So.
Keely, could you also grind toward the camera a little bit? There you go. And that has a vacuum and pulls all the little pieces of glass down into it, right?
This is, the grinder is a diamond head, like I said, and most of the particles will fall down in here. I already put water on it, but you definitely want it to be wet, no matter what. So then, once you're done, I rinse it off to clean off particles. And I might move over here if you don't mind to do the soldering part. So I don't know where should I put that?
Oh, you're on the chair.
Just right here? Okay. Okay.
Go short the glass in the first.
Okay, so basically what I'm doing is the whole process that I already started with the bevels. So I did the same exact thing. I grinded with the glass grinder every one of these so far. So I'm just finishing off with these last two, and you can see how it's like the edges are grounded. So eventually I'm gonna put them, foil them and solder them and put them here. So,
Is the foil decorative or functional?
there's different types to use. So since this piece is clear, like there's copper foil, black back foil, and silver foil. Because this is going to be a silver piece in the end, I'm going to use a silver back, which I'll show you right here. This is the tedious part, let me tell you.
Julie, do you want to move your thing in case the wind starts?
That's a good idea. I'd be heartbroken.
Yeah.
Because like the things I'm trying to show you might only take like 20 to 30 minutes to make, where these are closer to like 40 hours.
Yeah.
So, thank you. So, okay. With the foil, Okay. So when you have to solder glass together, you have to wrap it in either copper foil, which I'm doing, or the lead paint that I talked about before. So. Okay. So this is copper foil tape. If you notice, that side's silver. So it's literally like tape. So what you have to do is make sure the edges are clean and then apply it right around your piece. And you want to make sure it's straight. So it's literally like putting scotch tape around the glass.
You're so quick at that.
I
You'd be like-
know. It takes a long time to do it that way. And then just want to smooth the edges out. And then the most important part, which a lot of people don't do, is called burnishing. So you want to make sure it's like nice and smooth. It's stuck on here, sorry. Okay, so you could buy a tool like this that supposedly has grooves that makes it easier. I prefer a popsicle stick. It works so much better. I mean, you can just, so what I do is just kind of rub the edges like that. Other side. Make sure the corners are down really good. And then just kind of go around all four sides. And all of that's doing is making sure that copper tape is like really stuck. Nice and tight. I've repaired projects where people skip this step. And it doesn't take too much long to do, and it just makes it last longer. It's better. But if you could imagine one of those pieces I did over there, you have to do this with every single piece. So boiling, sometimes I'll sit in front of the television and just watch shows and just foil for hours.
And Keely, do you have a certain size where you allow, for that foiling as opposed to the channel lead?
I mean, it all depends. Like, lead cane, that's why we use that method for my, work, our big windows, because you definitely want to go that route. I would think anything that would be around, oh my goodness, 24 by 24 or less would be still fine.
Okay.
But if you're going larger than that, you definitely want to do the lead cane with the cement. It's just stronger. So more hobbyists use the copper foil method. But if we do a lead cane window that has an intricate face with a lot of details, we'll copper foil just that part and then use the lead cane around it. There's a lot to know about stained glass when it comes to how to make it little tricks like that. So, turn this on, that might take a little bit to heat up. Okay, so now that I have they're burnished, grinded in place, I just use these little push pins to keep everything straight. So when you solder, the best way to start, so I'm going to use the smokeless flux. It still might be a little bit humid though. I start off with every joint, every corner. Just make sure everything's kind of lined up. Okay.
What did you say that is?
This is called, it's a smokeless flux, which I'm only really using here because I don't want the room to get all stinky. If I was doing something at work, I'd use a different type of flux and then put one of these respirators on, and I'd have a fan that fumigates everything. You don't want to breathe in lead, that's for sure. Because the solder I'm going to use is 60-40 lead and tin, so it's still, you don't want to be breathing it in every day.
Can you explain what the flux does?
Okay, so the flux, this is like, you have to put this on to make the solder adhere to the copper, like the copper foil that I just placed on. So it's a chemical that just makes it all stick together. Yeah, like if I didn't use this, the solder wouldn't stick to anything, so what is it? I don't know what it's actually made of. Zinc chloride, avoid contact with skin, eyes. So, yeah. And this is supposedly the safer stuff we use. And, so then, here's the solder that I'm going to use. So I'm going to use a soldering gun. After I put the flux on, it'll stick to wherever I put the flux. And then once that cools down, I'm going to put more flux over the whole entire thing to finish it out. So this is what I was saying is 60-40 tin lead. So just don't know if this is hard enough yet. Sometimes it takes a while to get the soldering iron to heat up. That's a soldering iron, and then you plug it into this and wait for it to heat up, and that's what's eventually going to melt this and make it all stick together. So I already see that one of these diamonds is a little off. So I'm going to straighten that out. If anybody keep throwing questions out at me as I work, just because,
If you solder a joint and it's crooked, can you unsolder it?
yeah. And that's like how a lot of times when we do repairs, that's like the repair process is unsoldering.
Oh, yeah.
So if you could see, I'm just kind of tack soldering these little joints.
Doesn't take a lot to just make that connection.
Nope, just like a little tiny dollop. And then I'll go in the center.
Like to hold the whole thing together?
So far. Well, enough that I'm not gonna have to worry so much about things moving around. Okay. So then I'm gonna put more flux over the entire, like, all the copper foil. And just kind of just paint it on there.
Do you do both sides or?
Yep.
Okay.
So this is just one side, and then I have to do the edges.
So yeah, you're going over that several times.
Yep. And then once you think you have it done, then you look and you might see some messy parts, and then you do it again. So whenever I solder, I usually just try to run like this straight line here. Just like a nice smooth, like flat bead. And before it's completely finished, I'll take like any of the bulky parts out and try to make it all smooth. So it gets like down in between the cracks on the first side.
So you're soldering over the copper?
Yep. The
So we
copper
don't even
is,
see copper?
no, the copper is what holds the glass together. So that's just like one of the steps in the process. Yeah, you definitely need to have it all covered with this solder, because that's what holds it together. It's not too many of those.
Go to your house now.
Just saying about this one.
There's a couple of streams that go east.
But my son,
Yeah. Oh, well.
This says strong thunderstorms until 8 o'clock. Oh, now it's a tornado warning.
Oh!
Until 8 o'clock, so,
7:41.
yeah.
Wow. So as you can see, the foiling part and the soldering part
Oh, yeah, not us.
So do you just keep doing layer after layer until it's
Well,
covered?
I covered the whole thing, both sides and all the edges.
And then Franklin cord.
And then after that, I kind of hold it up to the light and see if there's any like rubs.
Interesting. I know, it's perfect.
I don't see anybody in that.
So if you're not good at that, it comes out bumpy generally?
Now.
What's that?
Is it gonna be bumpy if you don't have really steady hand or dry it?
No, probably at first, but then like I said, even like with glass cutting, the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Because it looks like you really have to be steady to pull the bead and get that line.
Yeah.
Or you wind up getting the
Yeah.
bumpy ridges.
Like that, I see some bumpy ridges still, but that's what I'll fix at the very end.
I'm not seeing it.
No.
It's like a pretty good one.
Yeah.
And that warning is for Washington County, like
Where
Canonsburg.
I live.
Yeah, where you live.
Oh, this
Yeah.
one's Shaler and Ross Township.
I see that one too.
Mine's in Beaver County, everybody's got a different.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking
I was looking at these, like I'm
Okay,
actually
so I
on the
just
map.
did like the
right now,
outside
different-
ones, and now I'm gonna do all these inner valves. And all I'm doing is brushing this flux back on, just so
So
the
does
solder
that
has something
flux
to
just
stick to.
evaporate or?
Well, I'll have to eventually wash it all off, but like I said, this solder wouldn't stick without. It's almost like, if you're painting something that needs primer before your actual paint. Like you wouldn't strip a door and then just put paint straight on the wood, you need a primer. That's kind of what the flux is like that.
Makes it stick more better.
Yep.
So how many of those do you make for the Christmas season?
Last year, I think I made 75 of these. That's why I just chose something I knew I could generally do kind of quick. Okay, so I have the flat side.
In her world, that's.
Yeah, right. In her world.
So I have that soldered so it stays
wow.
together. But you can see the backside still is just copper foil, so I have to do the backside now too. And I always put these tacks
But it
on
looks
so
so
it doesn't
pretty.
twist around.
That is beautiful.
So how much do you get for one of those?
This particular design, we usually charge around $30 for, I believe.
Really?
That's it.
Not bad.
But we do more complex designs that, I mean, the longer it takes, the more expensive.
Yeah.
But,
Are you doing different colored glass?
we, yeah, sometimes people, I did a bunch with like some light blue, just like wintry colors. And I've done ones that people ask for, like the typical like red and green, which
Yeah.
aren't really, I mean, those look nice, but I like snowflakes more to just be wintry. And
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
So
bright colors.
the pictures that you did with the colored glass, like, how does the glass get colored?
There's so many different like glass manufacturers, like we get ours from, there's Wismach that's in West Virginia, there's Kokomo that's in Indiana. Spectrum used to be in California, they went out of business, that's what I use that, the kind of psychedelic looking glass, they went out.
So you're actually buying.
We'll buy full sheets, either real big sheets or little packets, and then we just kind of cut them as we need for whatever shape.
So when you buy, like if you were using rose colored glass and you cut it, would it be rose on the side or would it be clear on the side?
Well, it'd be clear, because it'd be colored on one side and clear on one side,
Oh,
because it's
okay.
kind of like how they make the glass, they fuse it together. So that's what makes it colored, but you wouldn't see the side of it, because it would either be covered with copper foil or lead paint.
Okay.
So you wouldn't see the sides. It all depends on how, like, we don't make the actual glass ourselves. So we order it and then we use it.
And they have to ship all this glass. And does it always come in one piece?
We try to do 4 glass orders a year to save on shipping. So we're getting from Ed Boys, which is near Chicago, is where we just ordered of freight from. So we spend about $4,000, but they're gonna be delivering like all the glass we need for our projects for the rest of the year. So that's how it comes. But then that's where we get like our big boxes of lead cane and the rest of our supplies. So that's why we only try to do it 4 times a year. But what's really cool is there's a company down near in Connellsville, Yockegamy Glass. They make the best glass. They ship all over the world. So it's nice because usually like every 2 months, I'll just go down there and be able to hand select like important, like stuff for like pretty important jobs because they're expensive, but it's worth it. Because like that's the company that made the glass I use for like Jimi Hendrix here and that project. So it's pretty neat. Like you can drive down there, go through their warehouse and hand select everything. So it's kind of like shoe shopping, I guess. So.
Kim, do you remember, there used to be a glass
This is good.
place on Hancox?
Yeah, it was a few
Yeah.
doors down, they closed years ago. though.
Okay, because my mother used to do this, and I remember shopping there with
Yeah, that's
her.
been gone.
I still have in my attic a couple boxes of glass.
Oh, wow.
I'd like to try,
Yeah.
what was it called?
I don't remember the name of the store.
It's a shame Swickley Glass closed down too. There used to be that gorgeous old building in Swickley. That had it. And now there's a woman who owned the Little Red Schoolhouse. It's down by Boardman, Ohio, or not Boardman, I'm sorry, where they have the flea market. Rogers, Ohio.
Rogers,
And
yeah.
she bought the entire inventory, so you can go down there now and she sells the glass and all the
wow.
stuff, yeah.
Huh. Wow.
When you're doing a restoration of like an old church window, is there ever the need to get glass replaced that's that same
Yes.
age? Okay.
Yeah, we do, we have like a whole stock of old glass that we save from, you never know, you could reuse something that's only that big that's important for a different job. But we have like a whole section of antique glass. But if not, then we can contact those 2 that I was talking about, Wismach and Kokomo, that are in West Virginia and Indiana. They're still functioning and they're the 2 oldest in our country. So if we need to send them, sometimes we'll send them a little sample and be like, hey, we need like a whole sheet of this custom made. So of course that gets pricey, but if it's like for a true restoration, I mean, it's important to do it right.
They can match the glass.
Now you would have to go on site. Because you
Yeah.
can't take that window out.
Well, that's what we normally do is we take the window out and then we fix it in our studio.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's what our company does.
Oh.
That's it. Snowflakes like this don't keep us in business. Stuff like that. I'm just saying.
Oh, I didn't
So this
realize
is
you
just
could take
like-
the window out.
This is just little side stuff that we do there. The original owner, Linda, who hired me, she actually passed away 2 weeks ago. I know. So she taught me how to do all this stuff.
Wow.
So it's pretty neat. So, okay. It's not perfect. I'll fix it up later. I just feel like I'm boring you guys.
Oh, God.
But when you do,
Oh.
so the edges, like what I'll just do, and the edges are the easiest, you just kind of keep it horizontal. So I'll just do like all of these ones first.
Does that cool down like right away?
Usually, it depends on how much you are there. Usually within 10 seconds. And I could kind of just see the bead of it wanting to drip a little bit, so that's why you just hold it in place.
Now, if they were gonna demolish a building, would they call you if you want the windows?
Mm-hmm.
And you can take them?
Yep, and that happened with us before. But it's just, it's hard to find a buyer for us to restore, because you'd have to have like the right place to hang it, or, I mean,
Yeah.
perfect place would be like a brand new building or restaurant that could build around an old window.
You
So-
take them apart and save the glass?
we could do that too, but we don't really like to kind of destroy someone else's artwork. That's the way we look at it. We'd rather just restore it and see it reused than take it apart. But if we've had something at our studio for over 15 years and that becomes the case, we're like, okay, we could just reuse this glass for something new. But that's pretty much, yeah, the restoration part's very cool. We worked on, like Point Park University bought the old Pittsburgh Lighthouse downtown a few years ago, and they discovered the whole building had these stained glass skylights that were completely boarded over since the 50s. So these new architects went in there and went up to the top level, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's all this stained glass. So we were contracted, and we worked on it for over a year, but we re-leaded all of these cool skylights. It's funny, there's a news story about it and everything. So, I didn't physically have to go there, but I had to do the news interview, which was terrifying. I was like, I'd rather go to the actual building site. So if you could just see like what I'm doing, I'm just soldering around all the edges to get all that copper foil covered. And like I said, when I get back to the studio tomorrow with better lighting, I'll see some flaws and whatnot. But this just gives you a gist of how you cut, you grind, you foil.
So then how do you attach a hanger to it?
I brought a little bit of wire, so I'll show you that.
And you have a store at your company?
We have a little showroom, but like I said, we've been so backed up from COVID that our showroom isn't what it always is. But yeah, like I usually when it comes around Thanksgiving time, I try to have a whole window upstairs full of these, and that's where we sell them. We have like a bunch of smaller windows for sale, but stained glass, like I said, it's tough to sell a stained glass window because somebody will like something, but then they're going to be like, but I need it to be 18 by 36, not 24 by... So all these different window sizes, it's just a tough sell. So that's why most of our stuff, like what I showed you on my computer, it's custom, because then you can get whatever design and size that you want. So this is just this copper tin wire. So usually, you have to be hung right. So what I normally do for these, people usually like to be hung around that low. So just to make sure it's sturdy, I'm going to cut this wire and this is the back side of the snowflake, by the way. And I just solder it down. I probably solder it down a little longer than needed because let's see, that just dripped. So that's like one of those mess ups. So you get it tacked down in there and I'll clean up that little drop. Oh, one thing I should say about soldering, you never want to put the soldering iron on the glass for too long because the heat could break the glass itself and that's things so we have to repair these.
Now, some of those older windows, isn't the glass thicker?
It depends, like there is thicker glass that's like architectural glass.
Yeah.
And that's why, if you notice in that little, like that small lead cane window, how some of that lead was thicker.
Yeah.
There's different thicknesses of lead you could use to accommodate for thickness in glass. Because normally glass is 1/8 of an inch thick, but bevels, like these things in my snowflake, those are closer to like 3/16. But you could get as much as a 1/4 inch.
Right. Now, to cut the thicker glass, is it still one score?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing when you see the craftsmen that I work with that have been there for over 20 years.
Yeah.
They're like, it's amazing.
Oh,
I'm still a rookie compared to them, and I've been doing it for, oh my goodness, 15 years. Because I still feel like a rookie. Well, no, I guess they've been there for like 25 years then. So,
Wow.
so that's a classic example. I might repurpose this wire to make it, like, make it look a little bit nicer. Like I would be so happy with that.
I love it just the way you have it, and,
Beautiful.
yeah, I'd love to purchase it tonight.
You are shameless.
I am shameless.
Just say.
But
When I see something I like.
It is beautiful.
Well, like I said, I definitely would spend more time on this and just clean up. Like, there's some little dollops I'm not happy with. And clean it up, but yes, you can see that there's some bumps there. So that would be the final part. And then once, like, let's say that I was happy with all these solder lines and whatnot. Normally, if I had a sink, but I'm not gonna do that. Normally, I just wash it with good old detergent and water.
There's a sink down the hall.
Okay, so what I would do is,
Yeah, or in the kitchen.
I'll run down there and do that, and then
You want to do the
I'll show
kitchen?
you. Okay.
Just come straight through here.
Yeah.
A lot of people think you have to buy special cleaners, and
No. No. Wow.
She made that look easy.
Yeah, that would be so much fun to try.
Well, that's the thing, I've been doing it for 15 years, you know?
You're just running that soldering iron back and forth to get that straight. Even bead.
Honest to God. Wow. I'm still trying to make it very fine. Stop it. Because I know you always say, you don't need to make it too big.
What? Well, this is really fascinating. I've never seen stuff.
I had no idea how you made
I have a
stained
much
glass.
better appreciation for how much work goes into it.
Oh, that's for sure. I mean, I realized that there was something about that lead that kept it together, but I
I didn't
had no
realize the
idea.
copper was underneath.
Yeah, yeah.
I had no idea how they.
The little bit of tape. and
Yeah.
then- Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny how she uses a popsicle stick. I was watching them show how things are made,
Yeah.
and they were doing a bamboo fishing rod.
Yeah.
They're supposed to, and they're very intricate. This thing costs like $4,000. But when you get to this one point, they use a turkey baster for something that they're doing. That works the best for them. And this company's been in business from like the 1800s or something, making these things. But that's their tool. And you never know, you know? You find something like that. It's like it works the best.
So I guess you're seeing the show of all Hancox America. To get any more to see, bring something.
I got 2 more pieces today.
Wow.
So I think I'm up to 91.
That's a lot.
That's from us, and then they brought maybe close to a dozen pieces of kids' art and staff art. And they have clouds, big puffy clouds they made out of padding.
Oh.
It's, the theme is surviving the storm.
Oh.
So little clouds, they made raindrops.
Oh, cute.
It's hanging like that.
Cute. Oh, look at it shine.
and I did turn it on. I do have good habits. Like that, turn that soldering iron on. But, okay, so, and you can see, like that's the part that I will fix. Like, see how it's just bumpy? Like, I would never leave it like that, but, like, that's a good line. That's a good line there. But I'd clean up a lot of this.
Good, though.
But when you're under, you know, Tarleton Streets,
And I like the glass on the outside has a design in it.
that's called blue chip glass.
Oh.
So when they actually make a full sheet of it, they melt glue into the glass and then they chip it off. So it almost looks like floral or frosted. Yeah. It's just one of many types of glass. But these are bevels, that's bevel glass.
Yeah.
And most people like those more
Yes.
snowflakes,
Yes.
because it gives you that
Yeah.
resin effect and.
Yeah, the extra glitter. It has an extra shine. That is so pretty.
That's one thing. Okay, so, I guess I should ask you guys. So, I had to do this for a customer. I don't want to get too fumey in here. So I started just kind of soldering one side of this.
Oh my
so
God.
you could see. And then the back side, you could tell I haven't soldered yet because you can still see that copper foil. But I did like the same whole process with this whole design. So eventually I'll just put two little hooks here and a little chain. So basically I just need to finish soldering this.
Did you get that perfect circle? I guess you have two chances. One is you're making the score and the other is you're.
They were all tiny little pieces.
Yeah.
Like I'll show you the pattern for that.
Yeah, pretty.
So,
really hard.
yeah. So to make this, like that's what I followed.
Wow.
So like I used like 4 of the golds and yellow golds in the borders, 4 blacks in the borders, all the whites, and then the 3 stars. So I just cut up, that's what I'll do is I'm going to show you how to cut a pattern. Okay, so this is there. So let's say that I want to make this. Just like a little pumpkin. Well, here's how I would start. So there's what I'm going to lay it down on. And I'll reuse this. As you can see, I use ceiling tile for my little. I'm sure you could buy like foam and stuff, but if you have old ceiling tile, that's what I use. Just because you need something to hold your pattern together with like little push pins. Okay, so after you have a pattern drawn, and this one, as you can tell, I just drew it by hand. So I already cut out the little leaf and the top stem. But for the actual pumpkin, that's going to be 3 pieces of glass. So there's like special scissors to use when you cut a pattern. I don't know if you can see the insides open. So when I cut this out, it's going to remove that extra space that the copper foil and lead are going to take out. So see how it just removed that tiny little smidgen? And that's what it's important to use for like all that kind of stuff.
The spacer.
Yeah.
And not so much for like small sun catchers, but definitely for large windows that need to fit a particular exact size. And you would definitely want to use these special pattern shears. And they make them all different widths too. So if you're doing lead cane, this little tiny strip would be a lot thicker to remove like that part. So.
That would be a problem if you were off by just a quarter inch.
It is.
Huge.
We've had to completely redo windows before because it was off by 1/8 of an inch. So. Okay, so the orange glass I'll use for the actual pumpkin is here. So then just take marker and just trace the shape that I just cut out.
What do you do with your scraps?
I give them to North Hills Art Center.
Great job.
I give her so many.
Do they melt them into the pot or?
She, you can put them at the bottom of the pot and whatnot. So if I was doing,
Well, thank you.
sometimes our guys get a little bit wasteful at work. And drives me nuts, so I always try to keep my glass shards and either reuse it for a different project or give it to you guys, so. And we get a lot of people that, drop off scrap glass for us too.
Oh, yeah?
Like just people that are hobbyists that don't want to do it anymore. Like, we have a whole box of this in our basement. Do you want it? I'm always like, yes. No. Then my boss is like, stop saying yes. We have too much glass. Like just like little boxes. So. Okay. So what I just did there was those 3 pieces that I just cut. I just traced them right on there. So that's what I'm gonna cut now. So to try to save as much glass as possible, I'll probably go a certain way on this from like right here.
It is a very satisfying sound.
And like I said, like normally people would be using glass breakers, but I've been doing it long enough that I'm just used to the way I do it. So it doesn't always work though. So one thing though, with these curve shapes, especially like inner curved lines, those can be tricky. So I'll always cut those first. And then I'll cut the rest of that circle around because it's going to be, it's just easier to go like with the hardest cut first. Yeah. And then I just kind of go around this curved shape. And this is where I'll definitely use these because that's where you snip off those. And it goes down. I'll just kind of work around it. So see how when you were asking before, that is definitely not a perfect cut. So that's when you go to the grinder to get that. See how it's jagged? Yeah. And you can still see some of that line. So that's when you go back to the grinder. Did you hear that like kind of creaky sound? If you just add a little bit more water, that should help it. Yeah. Okay, so see how I have it kind of just laid out on my pattern?
Yep.
So that's one piece right there.
And the grinder does a good job.
See how I did that, like just right there? So I'll do that with the rest of the design, but for this, no, I was wrong, it was this piece of line. Hold on. Maybe not. That works. Oh, that's something I should say too. There's a smooth side to glass.
Yeah.
See how this has like a texture to it?
Yeah.
The rough side's the back side, so that's where I was wrong. So I had it backwards. So that's exactly how it should be used, that way. So because this is gonna be eventually, like, see how, my snowflake's silver, but see how that's all black?
Yeah.
So I wanna use a different foil for this that has a black back to it instead of silver, see that?
Ah.
So it's like, it depends on the project, like if you can see through the glass like this, then you wanna make sure your foil inside matches whatever patina you're gonna use in the end.
But are you going to use the silver solder or you have different color?
Silver solder, and then when I'm done, after that, you apply like a special finish to it to darken it.
Oh.
So that's like, that's what I did for all of my projects.
Because you're not going to see that underneath the solder.
You'll still kind of see the back of this tape through the glass.
Oh.
That's why you want to match it with the correct finish. The snowflake that I didn't have any finish on it because the solder itself is silver. But there's been people that ask for snowflakes with a black finish on it. They just don't, I don't think they look as good. But,
Sooty snow.
what's that?
Sooty ones, like soot.
Yeah.
Steel mill snow.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so I just applied that tape all around, and that's where I do the burnishing. Make sure it's all like nice and smooth on both sides.
It's a very satisfying job.
Yeah.
When you get done and you see this, what it makes.
Especially if it's a major, like a big project.
Yeah, you must be so happy and proud.
Yeah, so it depends, like sometimes if you have to make 75 snowflakes, it's a little
Well, yes, I suppose.
But like I was saying before, that's just an example of like how I would start that project. But back to my favorite part. So a lot of these other designs I've done.
Did I cover up all of your?
Yeah, you're good. But so a friend of mine asked me to do like Rosie the Riveter.
Oh.
So that's what,
Oh, wow.
like that little pumpkin I'm working on, that's what hers, and like with all that stuff. So and that's how it turned out in the end, and I ended up painting little polka dots. So if anybody wants to look at this stuff, I have just some samples of more interesting projects than a snowflake of a pumpkin. But and like that was with these two.
That's
Oh,
really pretty.
wow. There's that one. With some irises. It's like a downy woodpecker. That's how that ended up. So this just goes to show, like,
Is it that big?
yeah, this was the actual like pattern for it.
Oh, is that a window or a sun patch?
This was just like a hanging piece for a window, and the guy ordered 2 of them. So he wanted a woodpecker for one and goldfinches. So I just did like that same exact process for pretty much all of these. And I almost forgot too. Another thing we do in our company is we repair a lot of lamps. A lot. So
A lot of lamp.
lampshades. So this is a classic example of, if you ever seen like shades that are like slumped glass.
Oh, yes.
So these are tricky. We've had people drive to our studio all the way from like Philly, Allentown, like across the state and from other states, because nobody does this anymore. So we build like a fiberglass mold first, fire this in our kiln, then we cut the glass and melt it to like kind of fit on the mold.
Yeah.
And this fits back into their lampshade, but it's a lot of work, trial and error. And this is a good example of one that I worked on, oh my goodness, this is like 6 years ago. But these were pieces that just didn't quite fire right. If you could see, there's like that little bubble in there.
Oh, yeah.
And this one had like some dirt somehow get permanently fired into that
It's kind of
piece.
simple.
So, there was, so this was the actual lampshade I was trying to repair, so we had to
Oh,
do
my word.
multiple firings on these
Oh, my
pieces.
gosh.
Wow. And then copper foil, yeah. and
Kim,
then put-
hold that toward the camera.
Oh.
Okay, there you
Keep forgetting. So this was we ended up doing it, but it was many trials and errors, so. That's just another aspect of like using a kiln. And then, glass painting. Like sometimes there's like people like stuff like that where we actually use glass paint, kiln fire it, and it's permanent into like a glass panel. You can see. It's just a different technique. People don't want to take for all the copper foil or whatever liquor. So.
You use a special
Glass
tank
paint.
for that?
Yes, we do, and I actually brought it with me, but this is one of my very first attempts. This was like a portrait of the Patriot in a really big window. So I tried to, it just didn't turn out right, but you can't scrape that off. It's film fired, so it's permanently in the glass, but this was gonna just be a little silhouette in a pretty large panel. That was my first try. The second try was better, so that's in the window. This was just a leftover. I do have some of that paper you asked about. It's like a powder. I might have forgotten it. Got a lot of stuff. But it's pretty much like a tiny little tube of ground pigment that's actually glass particles, and you have to mix that with the ground gum Arabic is what it's called. Mix that with water, and you can't go over the same line twice when you paint. So it's kind of like what fresco painting, you know? So glass painting is tricky, so you can only do one layer at a time, then kiln fire, then you add another layer, different color, kiln fire, so it's just like, it's a long process, so.
Is that the same material they use like in a church window where you see it's usually with figures and painted
Oh, yeah.
face, so that's the same ground glass?
Most church windows that have figures and like, painted pieces and so. And then another thing we do at work is etch glass. And this is just a sample. So basically what we do is we print a pattern and we sandblast it. And you can get like different layers. And this is like a unit we made just to show, because we do like thermopane units and stuff too. But this is just
So is that
just a different
layers of
technique.
glass?
Yeah, so there's two sandblasted pieces of glass held together with our thermopane. So it's just a different technique than everything I just showed you. So there's just a lot of possibilities. So we do that stuff too. So
Holy cow. No wonder you're 6 months behind.
weeks.
Well, still weeks. Wow.
Yeah. But so that first snowflake I made, this is just an example of different patterns I could use and how big they could possibly be.
Wow.
So mine was small, but if you see,
Yeah.
I mean, some people like them really little and small, like Christmas ornaments. That's like the standard size.
Have you tried doing a wreath before with the restoration? Okay, that'd be neat.
Yeah, and usually with custom stuff, it's like one and done for a particular customer, but sometimes there's certain things that are just, that was really cool, I think we need to make more of those. So that's like little things like pumpkins that I know somebody's gonna eventually buy, and snowflakes and all of that stuff. So, a lot going into it, that's for sure.
Very good.
So, I think let me finish this up. Okay.
cutting glass.
Yeah.
I thought they had to go,
Back and forth. So how do you get the design and the sound glass thing for the attic? Like, is that done by computer, or are you drawing that as well?
So, like, let's say, hold on. I'm not lucky. So like for that Jimi Hendrix one. You could see like, come on, get bigger. Well, I drew that, that's to scale. So when that was printed out, it became like the actual size of what the window was. And that's how we do like our main stuff at the studio as well. So we've done windows, like huge windows that our plotter, our printer is probably the width of this entire table. So we can print really large cartoons and stuff, so that's how, so I'll just save that and then we print it and then the craftsman will just go from full scale. But I show the customers like the little designs just, you know, just to see which one they like. And there's certain ones that it takes forever for them to decide their design or they do a lot of like changes and it's part of the job.
You must get really strong muscles when you start doing that.
What's that?
You must get really strong. I mean, that looks like you really use a lot of pressure eventually.
It probably sounds worse than the pressure I'm actually using, but I definitely have calluses and blisters and whatnot. That's part of it.
I didn't realize how big the grinding was of getting it smooth. I always thought when people cut glass, it came out like exact.
yeah, I
I
didn't know
didn't
about
realize,
the grinding.
yeah, I didn't know about grinding.
Yeah, I
What
didn't
was that?
realize
I didn't realize grinding was such an important part. I thought when you use the glass cutter, you just kind of cut it
Well,
out the
like,
shape.
and like I was saying before, a lot of people actually skip that step. And then the foil won't stick to it.
No.
So that's important to, it's very tedious when you get, so like before I grind that, you could see that that's eventually gonna kind of make that shape.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
Oh, it's pretty.
And then, so like, I'll use like that brown maybe for the stem. And then for dark glass, so you can see what you draw, use like a lighter, a silver paint marker.
Do you cut yourself very often?
Yes.
You
do? Really? Yeah. I've had stitches a couple times. Not on my hands though. It usually was like when I was at our actual, like our main studio, walking in a piece of glass gel and like cut my ankle. Like, oh, it's frustrating. So see, I'm just kind of, for smaller pieces, I definitely use these. There's like a little, before I grind it, like a little stem. And then green will be, and whenever you cut glass, you always want to cut, like I said, there's like two sides, like this one has a rough side and a smooth side, so you always want to cut on the smooth side. I mean, you could cut on the rough side, but it'll be more difficult.
That's been for trouble.
Well, we have certain customers, there are just certain designs where the rough side would actually look better in front.
Oh.
So that's when we would use like the opposite side of the stencil and just flip it. Still cut on the smooth side, just do it backwards.
Oh.
So like that Jimi Hendrix panel, I don't know if you noticed, I did that technique on this. Like if you could see, like see how just his hair is that rough texture, because I wanted it to look like curlier. So I did that on purpose, where the smooth side is the back.
Yeah.
And it looks good on the back side too, but you can see the difference of the smooth.
Right.
Could you show the camera that one?
So like that's an example of
Oh, yeah. the
using
texture.
the textured side forward.
Right.
So when I cut the glass, I cut it on the smooth side, but I cut the pattern backwards so I could flip it so it would be in the front.
Nice.
So there's a lot of stuff, little tricks you can do like that just add a little bit more to the design, in my opinion. All right, let's get this little leaf out. And if you had a cutter that didn't have like the oil already in it, like a lot of people just have a straight up glass cutter, you would have to dip it in some type of cutting oil to keep it just kind of more fluid.
You can't use WD-40 or something like that? Does that help?
I never read the ingredients of this, but that could even be it. Like, I don't know, it's just a glass cutting oil is what it's called.
Now you refill that thing.
Yeah, so I think have to refill this whole thing maybe every 6 months.
Oh.
Yeah, so it lasts a long time. But if you didn't have that, I definitely recommend like dipping it into the glass cutting that you can get separately. So, see that little thing didn't cut so well. Yeah, so see how messy of a cut that was. It happens. So that's like I'm gonna have to grind all of this eventually, but this is a good example to show. They're like a small piece. There we go. Just kind of cleaned up the edges a little bit, shape better. Which I'll eventually do with the rest of this, but I don't want to make you guys, like I said, it can be tedious to watch someone do all this stuff, so.
It's nice to see it come together though. Seems like that's good together. all falls down in that grinder, then you have to clean out your
Yeah.
grinder.
And,
Yeah. All that glass.
yeah, because it could actually, if you don't do it, I'd say every like 2 months, it clogs it up and it can actually like kill the motor, and then you'd have to get a whole new grinder. And they cost, I think this is like around $175, so if you take good care of it, you could keep it for years and years.
Is your table higher where you work?
Yes. A lot higher. I know. I usually cut glass right around this high and, yeah. Yep.
So it's not very good. Yeah, that's right, so it's not her, not correct.
So, like, what I'm just doing is cleaning off like that glass grinder dust, because the foil sticks better when you clean it all off. So I'm gonna stick with that black, and that's what I use for the first piece. Another thing too, when you're foiling something, it's better to start on an interior line than to have it on an exterior line, because where the foil meets, there's more risk of it like pulling apart if it's on the outside. So you never know if somebody's gonna like handle it from the exterior, where if it's on the interior line, less chances of that happening. Make sure it all lines up. Like what I was talking about is where the foil meets, it's better to be inside than like right there on the outside. Probably wouldn't pull apart, but I was just always told it's better to do it that way. Like I said, with like stained glass, I'd rather do it, spend extra time doing stuff right in the first place than having to repair anything. 'Cause that's the worst. Repairs are not fun. See, there might have just been a little too much dust on that. You could see it just didn't stick at all. Let's get rid of that one strip. Try again.
Pretty finicky.
So how many different colors can you make solid? Are you gonna do black on this?
Well,
one?
solder, well,
Like how many different
I'll
patinas?
patina this, I'll show you that. You can, so silver is just like the natural solder color.
Right.
And you could use that silver, like foil with the silver inside, like I did for that snowflake. And for this one, I'm using the black foil on the inside. And then I'll patina this black after I'm done soldering. But there's copper, brass, and gold. And I've just never been a fan of any of those. I mean, copper, it pretty much looks like the foil, but a little bit tarnished. So I guess it's not bad, but brass and gold are just not my favorite colors. So, depends on the project though. If you had something to match in brass, then that you could use that color. Gold as well, but I just noticed that they all tarnish a lot more than just the silver, like regular solder in black. Okay. So what I'm going to do is use these push pins pulled this all together. Keep it all straight. And then, the leaf's gonna be more like an overlay, so I'm just gonna do these 3 pieces and the stem first, and then I'll do the leaf later. Glue this first, and I'll put this on later. Sometimes it gets twisted. So yeah, it's basically just like wrapping every piece with thin tape. And they make different thicknesses of this copper foil too. I like the thinnest stuff, but there's thicker as well. And that would be more for a little bit larger projects and stuff.
But it doesn't matter the size of the window, this is just
This holds it all together.
this you do it on everything. Yeah.
Oh yeah, every single piece. That's what I was saying about some of those other more intricate pieces, I think. Takes a while. Okay, so back to the flux part. So with this one, just because there's really no corners in it, I'm just gonna go like straight on with the middle. The exterior after.
It's hard to know how much solder to apply. Like I see you like dragging it down the channel, it's like kind of cracks.
Because especially on the first side, you want it to get down into the middle more. So you'll see, if I use too much, you see it on the opposite side, it'll like leak through a little bit, but that's fine because you could just smooth it out. See how it came through just a little bit on that side? So, do the same thing on this side. And then after that, I'll get the whole perimeter. And so like what I'm doing here, which I didn't do on the snowflake, just because this is a lot less solder lines, I'm just smoothing it out right away. Whereas remember with the snowflake, I still had some bumps I needed to clean up. So So like the second stroke that I do is just kind of smooth it out. Now for the end. And I always like to just keep push pins on there so it doesn't keep sliding around. It's annoying when you're trying to solder and it moves on you. Just did that a little bit. See. Sometimes what I'll do is just hold the solder up like that and just hold it with my finger and just kind of do like a dollop.
That'd go a long way.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, you don't really need much of it. Especially around the edges, like you need more to hold the glass together.
It dries so fast. It's
It
hard
does.
so fast. You do that and then you pick it up right away. It doesn't go.
Yeah, I pick it up quick. Because I'm telling, my hands are so callous. I don't think I feel burns that most people feel.
So it's still hot?
Yeah, it's definitely hot. Then you'll notice when I do the actual outside, I'll hold it with the towel so I don't get burned. I'm just doing like a run around the edges here. Oh. And I brought my glove. Like, I thought I forgot it for a second. So yeah. So for something hot like this, I hold it with this glove to prevent myself getting burned. And then I do it kind of the same way as the snowflake around the perimeter. So I'll just kind of that part, give it a little bit to dry, smooth that out. Then smooth it around. So yeah, I'm just kind of slowly working my way around it. Okay, so now for something like this, I'm gonna wash it and patina it real quick because when I put the little leaf on, I don't want it to look silver behind because this is see-through. So you'll see when I'm, just give me 1 second, I'm gonna wash this real quick. Is that light still on?
It's on the right, yeah.
I know.
I have no idea how to.
It's very relaxing to watch somebody else do it.
Yep. You gonna buy the pumpkin too, Kevin?
They're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what the process was. No clue. I love them. I think they're beautiful, but I just have no
It's
idea.
really hard.
A lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work.
You go back to that pastel color.
Yeah. Now normally before I patina anything, I would let this dry for, you're supposed to let it dry for a long time, but this is small, so. If you don't, you'll get some white oxidation that accumulates, which you can always eventually clean off, but let me get this little guy soldered first. Now, to solder a small piece like that little leaf, I would definitely use one of these tools. So I put the flux on it, and
You have to know all these little tricks.
well, in
It's like lots
The
of
longer
little-
you do it, you learn these little tricks by yourself.
But it seems like everything you do has a little trick.
Definitely makes it easier, but it's, like I said, it's more practice. Like, nobody taught me like to do it this way, I just kind of figured it out when I kept doing it a different way. There's gotta be an easier way to do it.
After you burned yourself enough time.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, it's actually not that, it wasn't that bad, it's just, okay, so, then I will,
So what is the temperature of that when it's hot? Is it like 300 degrees or something, or 400?
I have no idea how hot that environment
It's
is.
hot.
It's hot.
Oh, it's definitely hot.
And it's a low temp for melting metals, but it's hot enough to cook cookies, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, I have, I still have a big permanent scar on my knuckle from just one little dollop fell right on and it didn't get off in time. It was like, ah. And it festered, it was there for, I would say, 2 months. Just, bad burn. Okay, so when I mentioned about the different like colors, so this is called black patina. So that's what, so this is just regular silver solder.
It looks good like that though.
A lot of people like it that way too, but
This is Halloween time everywhere.
Yeah.
But some people, so it's literally just like this chemical that you just rub on there. And see how it's already darkening that
Look at
solder?
that.
And it matches that black color.
Yeah.
I usually would use a cotton ball for this, but it's not these sponges, so it's not going on as smooth as it normally would, but yeah. You can see how it's darkening.
Yeah.
And I prefer a lot, I like all stained glass to have like this nice dark pewter black patina on it. I just think it looks more finished. There we go, that's better. But one thing, if you ever have a cut, you don't want this stuff to get into a cut. And the same with that, with flux.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in those, that just stings so bad. It's just like a chemical that, and it happens. It's like, it's like getting lemon juice into a cut or something.
So you don't wear rubber gloves or anything when you're doing this normally?
I usually do with this if they're larger projects, and I forgot them. I normally would though, just as a precaution, because it stinks when you get that into a cut. Okay,
That
so
does look so
that
much
really
better.
it looks
really
a lot
does.
better.
Yeah.
So then I'm going to do the same thing with this little leaf. It's just going to be like a tiny overlay. Patina that too. And I could always touch up the patina again after it's finished, but I can see it, how it kind of just goes in overlay, but upwards. But I'm trying to match. Now what I'll do is just only need to use like 3 dollops of solder. Probably don't even need that top one, such a small piece. But now see how where I just soldered is silver again? So then I'm gonna have to go back over that with the black to make it match. With that, so then, if I have to do there it is. So then just to put like a little hanger on this from the back side. I didn't bring enough wire, so I might tomorrow at work maybe take this off and make it a little longer, but just to show you how I would do it for this one. Just kind of shape it. One thing though that happens with wire, it heats up so quick, so I'm gonna have to pop my fingers off pretty, yeah. It gets hot very fast.
The heat travels right down the wire.
Oh. Yikes.
This sounds
Use
very
the air
dangerous.
fryer.
And whenever you're putting wire onto something, you definitely want to hold it long enough so it goes right into whatever your solder line is. So then you know it's like really sealed. Because the worst thing is to have a piece fall down and break because the wire is not like attached properly. So then I do the same thing with the wire now. Like see how it's silver?
Yeah.
And then wire also takes to patina, so that can be black too. So it all matches up. Yeah.
That's very cool.
So that's a piece from front to like beginning to end
Yeah.
with using those shears that removes that little gap to make your blend lines. And there's that piece.
Very nice.
That was wonderful, Keely.
And I use this has a different wire on it, which I'm going to remove because I'd rather have it hang a little bit longer than have like a chain coming through the stem on that one. They're a little bit different, so trial and error. So once you start making more stuff, you figure out little ways to improve things.
That was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
I'd like, that was like so much that I didn't know.
That's the important thing, soldering iron on, because that's always what I always worry about is
Thank you so much. That was really informative.
That was a very nice little class.
I know there's a lot going on, but there's a lot to it. It all depends on if anybody wants to try it, shoot me an email or advice on just little things. But.
I want to go shopping.
I know.
Let me know when your store is stocked.
I like making stuff too, but my favorite part's like doing the design work and choosing the colors and the glass and all. Because then I don't have to make those big projects. It kind of is like,
If you
goes to our fabricators, so it's almost like the Chipley or Warhol type thing. Like, I get to come up with the fun stuff, you make it.
Keely, if you have a color palette on the computer that you can actually colorize your design.
That is,
That's not-
that program is from 1990. That's such an old
I was
program
going to ask you
But
why
that's what
why
we
do you use
use.
watercolor then?
because this program is old. Like, it doesn't, you can't, well, there's just new programs that we don't have. So I couldn't press a shape and just click like a color swatch, although those programs are out there. It's just my company's very old fashioned and they don't want, they like the way that they've been doing things, so. And people like to see that extra effort with the watercolor because it actually does make it look more like transparent, like stained glass.
Yeah.
So the airiness of the watercolors. So it's just an extra step in our process. So things work. I mean, if we get a new design program, I'd be fine with it, but then I'd have to
Learn it.
learn a whole new program. Like, this works just fine. So that's why we do it that way. And that's the way I was actually taught, so.
Thank you.
Very
That's
nice.
wonderful.
The problem with this design program though is the company that made it no longer exists.
Oh.
So if my laptop and our computer at work ever goes down, then we're gonna have to get something new. And I was kind of hoping that day doesn't come. And plus, like I said, we're just so busy that we don't really have time to even think about learning a new computer program. So. we're trying to
Leave
keep
well
it-
enough alone.
That's how we feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have good results, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think people kind of like us for that reason as well. We
Yeah.
do everything the traditional way and
Right, right.
just keep
right.
things simple as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though none of this is really that simple, but you know how.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.